Hi, I'm Liz with Toth Properties, powered by EXP Realty. I'm a residential real estate agent in Raleigh, North Carolina.
Today, I am so excited. I'm getting to interview Lindsay Teasley with Sterling Law. Sterling Law is a real estate attorney that I work with and I recommend to all of my clients. They're phenomenal to work with. So I wanted to introduce Lindsay and have her talk a little bit about herself, answer some questions about real estate law and things like that. So we'll get right into it. Lindsay, why don't you introduce yourself? Tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got into real estate law.
Sure. So I'm Lindsay Teasley. I am a real estate attorney with Sterling Law. I have been practicing real estate for about 9 years now. Actually started getting into real estate and doing some internships prior to law school and then also during law school. So I've been in the real estate world for about 11 years now. I am from North Carolina, grew up in Greenville, North Carolina, went to school there, and then ended up moving to Raleigh for law school. And I have been here ever since.
Oh, that's awesome. Very good. Well, cool. Well, how many transactions do you think you do on a yearly basis or work on?
Oh, goodness. It depends on the year. I would say throughout my career, at this point, I have done thousands of transactions. Um, Depending on the year, some years are busier than others. Some, we may do over 1,000 transactions. It just depends. But overall, in my whole career, definitely up there in the thousands. But you start to lose count at some point.
I'm sure. And I'm sure you've seen some interesting things happen. Every transaction, I know from my perspective, is unique and different. So I'm
Yeah.
sure you have seen a little bit of everything all across the board, right?
Yes. Yes.
Um, Very cool. Well, I always work with people who are from out of state, or it seems like I work with a lot of people from out of state. And a lot of in other states, they do things different. There's like escrow companies, or, not everybody use real estate attorneys, or if they do use real estate attorneys, they're more involved in the process. So to help clients that I work with from out of state, can you explain a little bit about what real estate attorneys do and how they play a role in the real estate transactions here in North Carolina?
Yeah. So real estate transactions with real estate attorneys, the attorneys are really someone who is in your corner, kind of behind the scenes, that's really protecting the client. So in a real estate transaction, there are so many moving pieces, so many moving parts, so many nuances, and there's things that you really want to be sure are clear before you purchase property. So one of the main things that we're doing is a title search. That's an in-depth research of the property. So one of the things that we're looking for is to make sure title is clear. And what that means is there's no liens on the property that haven't been paid or that need to be paid at closing. There's no missing link in the chain of title where there appears there could potentially be an owner who didn't convey their interest, or sometimes in North Carolina. So people from out of state, one thing that I run into that they're not aware of is in North Carolina, HOAs do also have lien and foreclosure power. So what that means is if you do not pay your HOA dues, the HOA does have the power and the authority to put a lien on the property and also start foreclosure. So one thing that we have been seeing a lot of in the last year is a lot of HOA liens on properties and also active pending HOA foreclosures. So one thing that we're doing is making sure when we run into that issue, that's something that we need to fix and address before our client purchases the property. So it's making sure any issues that are surrounding the property don't become our client's property or our client's problem once they purchase it.
Okay. Wow. I didn't realize that you're seeing that more and more today.
Yes, so in just the last 6 months, I have seen more HOA liens and pending HOA foreclosures than I have probably seen in my career.
Wow.
So definitely become a lot more prevalent.
Okay. Okay. Well, that's good to know. What are some of the most common challenges or issues that you face in the real estate transactions that you work on, and how can if there are challenges and things like that, how can buyers or sellers protect themselves?
I would say one of the common issues that we run into is when there are estates involved on the seller side. A lot of those issues come from Estates are just kind of one of those weird things, and sometimes people don't exactly know how to navigate it. So we run into the issue of once we get a contract, we either don't have all of the parties who have signed or the correct parties. One way to kind of address that up front is if you know there's an estate on the seller side. North Carolina is now switching over to what's called the Odyssey portal, where we can actually access estate documents online. So that's something that we could look at prior to going under contract to make sure that we have the correct parties signing contracts for the estate. Another issue that we run into is names on documents. So this is frequently an issue if someone has just recently gotten married, especially if you have a lender in the transaction. We need to make sure that your name that's on the documents matches the name that's on your ID. So sometimes if you've just recently got married and you know that you're going to be changing your name, it's best to wait and do that until after closing, so there's no discrepancy between maybe your social security card and your driver's license. Another issue, obviously, and I think that a lot of people are aware of at this point, is wire fraud. There's a lot of talk about wire fraud going on in the real estate industry. I always tell people, just be diligent, keep your eyes open, your ears open. If anything looks weird or feels off, just always call your closing attorney and ask, did you send me this email? Always call and confirm wiring instructions before you send any wire. Even if it looks like it came from the closing attorney, it looks like an email that you've received, always call and use contact information that you have independently obtained. So if you get wire instructions via email, you don't want to just use the phone number that's in that email.
Mm-hmm. That makes sense. And I always tell people, if you're going to call and verify wiring instructions, to like make the attorney read the instructions to you. Don't you read, because if you're calling the wrong person in the first place and you're reading instructions to them that are incorrect, well, of course it's going to be right. You know, right? Yeah. What about, and you guys have a special process, or there is a special process for sellers to avoid wire fraud when you're sending seller proceeds to somebody? What is that process? And, how can sellers be prepared for that?
Yes. So we have what's called a proceeds authorization form. And that is a very specific form that is filled out by hand, where the seller writes down their account information. So the account number, loan or routing number, the name that's on the account, and the bank that the account is held with. That form does have to be signed by hand and notarized. We have to have the original before we send any wire. Obviously, if the seller is signing with us, there's not much of a concern there because they're with us, talking with us. We see them sign it. It's being signed and notarized. If we have sellers who sign remotely with another notary, our step before sending any wire is we always call the seller using the contact information that we have on file for them. And we are verifying the instructions with them before we initiate their wire. So it's taking every step possible to make sure that the correct information has been received and that the wire will be going to the correct place.
Okay. Because I know there have been instances, not at Sterling Law, but in other law firms in the Triangle, where money has been sent to wrong places. Is that correct? I mean, it is a pretty serious thing. It's terrifying to me. Like, when I see like someone sending their wire, it's like, I'm always urgently waiting to hear from the attorney that money was received and, got there safe and sound. So yeah, I know that's, would you say that's the number one thing that's challenging right now?
I think that's the most nerve-wracking part of the transaction for a lot of people. Once people have either if it's from a buyer, once they've sent their wire, they're anxiously waiting to receive that confirmation that it's been received. And with sellers, once the transaction's closed, they're anxiously waiting for those funds to hit their account. On the seller side, it's not as much of a concern for the wire fraud because they're signing with us. We're sending out the wire, so we're kind of in control of where that wire is going. It's with buyers that it's more of a concern because there is that risk of having wiring instructions, fraudulent instructions intercepted and sent to the buyer. That's why we stress to buyers, make sure you call, make sure you call, make sure you call and verify those instructions.
Yeah. And you always send your instructions via secure email. So that, so it's less likely to be, for them to manipulate the instructions. Is that right?
Right. Yes. We send them through we have an online closing portal. And so they are sent through the online closing portal, which is encrypted.
Okay. Awesome. Well, good. I know it's in the recent years, there's been a lot of steps and processes and things like that. I will have some people sometimes, especially sellers, who are like, we'd rather get a check, but even getting a check is kind of scary too, because what if you lose that check and it takes a long time sometimes if it's a significant amount for it to clear. So really,
right.
Wiring is probably the best situation you could have, but it's still nerve-wracking for sure.
Yeah, it's scary for people, that's for sure.
Awesome. Well, good. Well, for buyers, you talked a little bit about how real estate attorneys work to help people who are moving here from out of state. For a buyer who's coming here from out of state, what are the benefits to using an attorney versus like a title company or things like that, especially for those folks that are coming from like California where they use like an escrow company and that?
So I would say the benefits of using an attorney, you have someone who's been to law school, who's trained in real estate. Like with us, we are a real estate only law firm. That's what we do. We are not also, doing traffic tickets or family law. We are fully focused on real estate. You have someone who's really in your corner, fighting for you, protecting you, making sure that before you purchase a property and take title, that everything looks good and is clear.
Awesome. And Sterling Law is great. They're very involved with the Realtors Association. So they're, regularly participating in meetings with agents and learning about challenges and helping us with the challenges that we come into contact on a daily basis. Because it seems like there's always something new going on. The one I think that was became a big deal last year was that people who are posing as sellers on vacant land. Helping us with how to handle that, what to look for, and things like that. It's good to have somebody who is a partner who can help us in that process as well. So I know you said you worked on thousands of transactions. If you can disclose, what is like the craziest thing that has ever happened or that you've ever seen in a real estate transaction?
Oh, there's been lots of crazy things.
Sure.
Everyone is different. One that always sticks out in my mind is, so it was a few years ago, we had a transaction. There was an estate on the seller side, and we had been told up until throughout the beginning of the process that one of the sellers was unmarried, which was fine. One of the documents that we always have sellers sign as part of the seller documents is called a marital status affidavit. When we got the marital status affidavit back, the seller had actually disclosed that they had been separated since the early 1990s. Wow. Which creates a problem because their spouse does need to sign the general warranty deed over to the buyer. So that created a number of hurdles that we had to jump through in order to ultimately find that spouse and get the deed signed. So that was an interesting one for sure. You don't often run into people who have been separated for decades, but apparently it happens.
And of course, it probably all happens at the last minute because that's when everything happens. Like you realize it like maybe a day or two before close, right? Which makes like it even more difficult sometimes. So.
Yeah, because I think in people's minds in situations like that, they've kind of decided in their mind they're not married. They've been separated for so long. They might not even know where this spouse lives anymore, but legally, until you're divorced, you're still married.
Yeah. Wow. That is crazy. Well, with regard to Sterling Law, Sterling Law is my preferred real estate attorney that I work with and I recommend to all of my clients. They're a great resource for me if I have random questions from, like I recently did, have some questions because I was working with someone who had an estate. And so they're a great resource for me. But, tell us a little bit about like, how is Sterling Law different from other real estate attorneys? Why should someone pick you versus like even for agents out there that are looking for a great partner and, need someone in their corner? I would always recommend Sterling Law, but tell us a little bit about how you're different than other real estate attorneys.
Yeah, so I think the biggest difference in what separates us is the people and our team. So we have multiple offices. The offices are run by branch managers who are very experienced, very knowledgeable. They are focused solely on real estate. We have an amazing team of paralegals and support staff who are very efficient, very communicative. I know our paralegal here in the Raleigh office, I'm constantly asked after closings if she's here, can people meet her? Constantly getting feedback on how great the communication is. So I think, real estate attorneys, we're all doing the same work. But what really separates us are the people here, I think, in our team. It's really what we pride ourselves on, and I think kind of makes us different from the other real estate closing attorneys in the market.
Definitely. And one of the things that I see, because I've worked with others in the past, in representing both buyers and sellers, I like your little, just because, I have clients that have had their identities stolen and they've gone through that whole process and they're very nervous to put any information out there. And Sterling Law has a great like secure portal that you can go in and access and put your information in and know that it's protected and that no one else is going to get that information. Whereas sometimes if you're filling out forms and scanning and emailing and it's not secure, you're putting yourself at risk, especially if you're putting like a social security number out there or something like that. So I think that's one of the things that I like a lot too, is that, my clients feel a little more secure in submitting all their information that way. So that's one of the things that I appreciate that you guys do as well.
Yes, definitely. We do get a lot of positive feedback on the closing portal. It's just one of those extra steps to make sure that, one, it's easy access. It's available 24/7. So you can log in at any time and see your documents, kind of see where the closing's at. And then even after closing, if you're doing your taxes the following year, you can log in and pull your documents from closing, which is nice. But it's also just that additional layer of protection and security for clients and parties in the transaction.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, cool. Well, thank you so much for taking time. I'm definitely going to put your information in the verbiage below the video, so that if you wanted to contact Lindsay or Sterling Law, if you're an agent or a buyer or seller, and want to connect with them, for a transaction or for more questions, that contact information will be out there. And Lindsay, thank you so much for your time today. I really appreciate you participating in this. And again, I just love to get to showcase some of the professionals that I work with in the industry today. So thank you for taking the time to watch my video. If you have questions about relocating to Raleigh or move into the area or buying or selling, don't hesitate to reach out. If you're researching the Raleigh-Durham area and you're thinking about moving here, check out my YouTube channel, Welcome to Raleigh. There's a lot of great videos, more videos like this, buyer tips, seller tips, community videos, and city tours. I hope you have a great day. And thank you again, Lindsay. I appreciate you. I hope you have a great day, and I'll talk to you soon.
All right. Sounds good. Thank you.